feed as well on FB.
Take your first step into the realm of fun, art, design, beyond. Embrace your perspective. Be part of the game-changing creative industry. Cultivate your environment. At FRSB, we divulge ideas more than shape your ambition. Because in here, we never stop dreaming. Together, we educate the future. Celebrate your potential here in FRSB.
Okay. All right. So, Assalamualaikum and good day, everyone. I hope all of you enjoyed the video. All right. So, I would like to welcome to the first International Architecture Students Symposium, a joint seminar between the University Putra Malaysia, UPM, and the University of Plymouth, UK. And for your information, it is 5 p.m. here in Malaysia and about 10 a.m. UK time. Okay, so my name is Dr. Roslina. I'm one of the senior lecturers from the Department of Architecture, UPM, and I'm the moderator for the symposium today. Okay, this joint seminar basically is mooted to start off and build collaborations between the two prominent institutes of higher learning here in Malaysia and also in the UK, and identifying uniqueness and strength of each other and learn from them, and also providing wider perspectives of educational design approach in both architecture schools, and also they are also part of the objectives of today's symposium. Okay, so fellow audience, the symposium will involve 4 programs from the 2 universities, which are the Bachelor of Science of Architecture Honours and Master of Architecture from UPM, and BA Honours Architecture and M.Arch Architecture from the University of Plymouth. Okay, by the way, before we start, I would like to announce that this program is live on the social media platform, Facebook and YouTube. And of course, you can find the link in the chat box, yeah? I hope, and it'll be so wonderful if everyone could share the link in your social media account. Thank you for that. And I would like also everyone to register. There's a Google link form in the chat box. You can register so that we know who you are and where you're from. Okay, all right. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Fakrizaki, our Head of Department of Architecture, Faculty of Design and Architecture, University Putra Malaysia, to present his welcoming remarks. And following that, welcoming remarks from University of Plymouth will be given by Professor Dr. Ajia Troyani, and Prof. Troyani is the subject lead of architecture and Professor of Architecture, School of Art, Design and Architecture, Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Business, University of Plymouth. And now I would like to welcome both Dr. Zaki and Prof. Troyani.
Thank you, Dr. Roslina. Hello and good afternoon. First of all, let me welcome everyone to the first International Architecture Student Symposium, joint seminar UPM University of Plymouth. Let me especially welcome our counterparts who are in the UK at 10 a.m. in the morning over there, to Professor Ajia Troyani, subject lead of architecture and Professor of Architecture, School of Art, Design and Architecture, Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Business, the program coordinators of both schools, students, and everybody who are present today. Thank you and welcome. The symposium today is a part of Putra Design Lecture Series. It is a series of talks and seminars hosted by the Department of Architecture, University Putra Malaysia, for the architectural fraternity and the public in general. This symposium today is the first of a series of planned engagements with the University of Plymouth, UK. We are planning more talks and seminars given by distinguished scholars from the University of Plymouth in this series. Please follow our department's social media for notifications of future events. I would like to extend special thanks to Prof. Troyani for kickstarting the collaboration, as well as the rest of the team from the University of Plymouth. A little bit of background for today's event. I did receive an email from Prof. Troyani earlier last year and only stumbled upon it months later, I admit. She was pursuing an earlier discussions between our former head of department and the University of Plymouth on possible collaboration. Thank you, Prof. Troyani, for your persistence in pursuing the agenda. Apparently, we had earlier received Professor Robert Brown and his delegation visiting our department a few years back. The late Dr. Shafizal Ma'ruf, our former head of department, was hosting you, and I believe that's where the idea of collaboration was mooted. Sadly, he passed away in 2018 and was replaced by Dr. Zalina Shari. By the time Prof. Troyani followed the email thread regarding the discussions, I stepped in as the HOD. For today's event, we are happy to have with us Professor Robert Brown and Mr. Andy Humphrey, representing the University of Plymouth programs and their students. And from UPM sites, we have 2 students from each of our programs, and Associate Professor Mio Muhammad Farid from the 3rd year studio, and Architect Wan Sofia Wan Ishaq, representing our master's program. The pandemic situation has offered us new ways of doing things. We now realize the potentials of getting with people from across the globe in real time, anywhere, anytime. If we were to have this seminar physically as with the old norms, imagine the financial implication, not to mention the carbon emission resulting from having to transfer people between the 2 institutions. The School of Arts, Design and Architecture, University of Plymouth is not new when it comes to engaging with Malaysian architectural fraternity. Over many years, many Malaysian architectural students studied there and came back with significant contributions to the industry. It is an exciting moment for our department to be in touch with such an institution. The Department of Architecture, Faculty of Design and Architecture, University Putra Malaysia, on the other hand, is a relatively young department. We started our program in 2000 with Bachelor of Design, Architecture, with exemption from the Malaysian Architectural Council, Part 1, followed then in 2004 with Bachelor of Architecture, Part 2 program. Now we run Bachelor of Science in Architecture with honors and Master of Architecture concurrently. Very early on, we decided that sustainable architecture would be the focus of our teaching and learning as well as in our research. Over the years, advances in the sustainable development has made it a mainstream agenda in the built environment. We realize behind this effort lies therein an important factor that would help make sustainable agenda a success. It is the agent of change to make the necessary transformation. And this is the students themselves. Thus, we start to focus on the humanness aspect in our graduates, among other agenda that we believe would bring the necessary transformation for a better world. In an age where information and technology are easily accessible and available, it is the human quality that would make or break the built environment. With this realization, we set our teaching and learning mode into invoking the innate potential of a holistic being in our students to prepare them as impactful agents of change for the coming age. It is of great honor for us to have the University of Plymouth collaborating with us on this event today. We believe in the value of offering such experience to students from both sides. Although the world is seemingly converging into a single global culture, the differences in each geographical location, hence in a way, and the schools of architecture is worth exploring. For I believe architecture cannot escape being imbued with local nuances. These differences, if understood among the learners, would provide a broadening of perspectives for them. I believe having the widest outlook on any aspect of life is of tremendous importance in an era where information are shared globally and instantly. It is an opportunity not to be missed. We believe the symposium today is just the beginning of further collaborative activities between the two schools. During our early discussions, we quickly realized that the strength of our counterparts could help enrich and complement each other in our missions. There will be engagements in other academic activities, such as in research collaboration, or joint teachings, or even studio assessment. We look forward for such an exciting opportunities coming out of this collaboration. I would like to congratulate the students presenting today from both schools for grabbing the opportunity to partake in the symposium. You would benefit your friends, your schools, and most importantly, yourselves by presenting in this symposium. Thank you for all those who strived to make this event a reality today. Too many to mention. Thank you to all staff and students from both sides and all who are present this afternoon to make today's symposium a memorable one. Next, I would like to call upon Prof. Troyani, Subject Lead of Architecture and Professor of Architecture from the University of Plymouth, to say a few words on behalf of her delegations. Over to you, Prof.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Associate Professor Mohammed Zaki. That's lovely of you. A very, very kind introduction and welcome. I wanted to thank you very much for hosting this first event. I see it as the first of many that we will share together, and very much an opportunity for us to understand what we each do. I think this is a marvelous way to start by looking at some of the excellent work within both of our institutions that we've produced over the last year. So I hope that it will also set up a framework for us in future teaching and research collaborations through a sort of deep understanding of where our expertise lies. What I did want to say is to give you a little bit of an idea more about architecture at the University of Plymouth, because there are some key things about us that I think are strengths. The first is that we have a very international staff that are world-leading researchers, where we cross over in many areas that you also work in. But I think also we're a small school. We nurture our students. We look very closely at how they develop their understanding of architecture for a future vision. And so in that sense, I think there are some very strong alignments as well. We're very community centered. You'll see from the projects that we present that we focus not only on local community engagement, but also global communities. And part of my reaching out to UPM was about making more international connections for us at Plymouth. And so I was elated when we were able to sort of begin this discussion. I think the third thing that's important is our utter commitment at the university at large, but also within architecture and ADA, art, design and architecture, towards sustainable centered design. But this is really about addressing issues of climate change through climate action through design. And for us, obviously, being in a different part of the world, those particular issues of climate change are different. And I think through beginning to share what's happening in the different geographies will be a really valuable way for perhaps us to make more significant contributions through design itself, but also through the research we produce. Finally, I wanted to say thank you, in particular to some people. Dr. Mohammed Zaki, first of all, Dr. Roslina for kindly chairing this, for your incredible effort in organizing it. I'd also like to thank the rest of your team, who I've met progressively in our meetings, but then to Toshika Terrazona, who is leading our international work in architecture, who has organized the whole event with you, but also the rest of our team, Professor Brown, Andy Humphreys and others who've joined in the conversations. And I want to thank the students from both universities for talking about their work. It's lovely for us to be able to celebrate these projects, and I look forward to the conversation today, beginning to understand some of the particularities of the work that we're doing at each university. So thank you very, very much to everybody. And yes, I look forward to it as we progress. Thank you.
All right. So, okay, thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Zaki and Prof. Triani again, for the inspiring welcoming remarks. It is, of course, chatting for more collaboration for both universities indeed. Okay, so it is so lovely also to hear all the possibilities in the field of research and teaching in particular. So we are so excited about that. All right, so fellow audience, for your information, the format of the symposium is as such. There will be 4 presenters in the first part of the symposium. The students will be presenting the final project from their final year degree program, which are from, as I said earlier, the Bachelor of Science Architecture from UPM and the BA Architecture from University of Plymouth. Okay, each presenter will be given 10 minutes each. And then we will have cross overview comments, 5 minutes each from representative of both UPM and University of Plymouth. Okay, all right. So to start today's symposium, I would like to invite the first presenter from the program BA Honours Architecture, University of Plymouth, Georgina Cameron, and her project is titled The Parallel of Change. So Georgina, you are given 10 minutes. All right, over to you.
Hello, I don't know if you can all hear me all right. So
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
Georgina.
Fine.
I'm Georgina and my project is called The Parallel of Change. So a little bit of background information. So Mill Bay was acknowledged holistically within our group framework, aiming to blur the edges between blue and grey in order to eliminate the polarity of the site, particularly through key threads of polarity, vertical rise and participatory. So what is soap? Soap is a substance used with water for washing and cleaning. And then the parallel of change is a poetic narrative of that soap, interrogating the resurgence of the lost memory from a waterfront ritual that was once rich in Plymouth's history, soap making and bathing. Key threads of presence and absence allows the memories of the historic soapworks and Royal Union public baths to be reinstated, and as a result invites a new collective to emerge over common ground. It is a reciprocal of renewal. The parallel of change is located within the North Cluster next to the harbour wall, the threshold between order and disorder, exploring the notion of dream, reality and imperfections. With the water becoming a main influence within this project, the main uplifting experiences the individual encapsulates is when the pace begins to slow as the textures underfoot alter, as ecology within the salt marshes start to overcrowd the public realm, specifically working alongside life on land and aiming to respond to the Fab City agenda of ecological. The proposal will take a holistic approach to regenerating an old ritual back to present day and ensuring a tangible amount of soap can be made available locally and globally for the local Plymouth pannier market and the wider area. This aligns to the manufacturing goods on the Resurge and Recovery Plan. Through the process of expanding memory, in alignment to my manifesto, the project aims to look at the threshold of placemaking in terms of symbolism and image. The project incorporates 2 lines of inquiry. It aims to deal with vertical rise whilst addressing the polarity of Mill Bay through to the perception of dream and reality. The architecture created is a result of an action and an event. Patina, a key thread, regenerates itself on an old surface and re-emerges on new surfaces to allow its identity to come to the surface based on notions of permanence. The irony between soap and patina is featured throughout the form of the building. However, they both imply a notion of residue, how traces and marks can be imprinted to allow a future resilience. The importance of the marks left by the patina of the city lies the identity. These 2 are narratives which address the polarity of water, begun with the death of Union Street, from an outbreak of cholera where the water was seen as death, with a residue of harmful bacteria within. However, my project therefore understands the water to be a purifying element, which provides cleansing and comfort layered with a residue of fragrance and longevity of aging that occurs. Light is deliberately brought into the building, where the user begins to experience thresholds of light which respond to a particular space. As the users enter the building, we can begin to address the verticality within the project. The sense of arrival portrays a subconscious navigation between horizontal planes guided by controlled vertical planes. The vista is framed to the water to create a passing threshold with a change in ground texture, walking from a fast to a slow pace when the views become open to the eye. The key space headlines a channeled entrance in response to the wider context of the group intervention of the water channel. In order to occupy the horizontal, one must occupy the vertical, and as a result, the horizontal is dissolved to capture the movement of the vertical narrative, which stems from dream and light. Voids to be controlled within the erosion to create a juxtaposition between the delicate and the permanent. So as water begins to enter the pools through a ground source heat pump, the hot water vapor hits the ceiling plane and crystallizes, forming a patina. As the patina builds up, it falls in a particular direction to the outside edge because of the new sloping ceiling that I'm creating, forming an edge of a stark contrast between inside and outside, echoing the poles of hot and cold. The overhead ground planes interact to allow a residue to be left on the plane below, creating a threshold walkway. The calcification of the water vapour from the steam created by the pools create an imprint within the concept of residue. The key space invites the individual to engage with a sensual experience of cold droplets which run down the spine whilst bathing in a hot bath. Zooming into a closer look at the building, moving from public to propositional space, shadows created set up a journey of the unfamiliar, wanting to reveal the journey to experience the uncertainty. Without the light, we have no shadows, and without light, patina has no manifestation. The circulation of the building has been broken down by the repetition of the elements that enhance the perception of dream, along with the elongated shadows which distill the sense of reality. The use of shadows and reflections which begin to fragment the vertical and horizontal planes, enhancing the polarity of dream and reality. The movement becomes faster when travelling within the shadows. However, the break with the beams of light channeling the floor above allows the user to have a reduced pace to admire the threshold they have passed on their continuing journey. A new shared collective over common ground emerges, allowing society to engage in leisure activities which have both health and social benefits. When programming the space, the key beacons of identity, memory, and history interfere with the soap workshop by inviting key processional chambers of rooms which all begin to inhabit a new function. There becomes a memory space to allow individuals to have a common connection to a real form of the building because the true reality of our memory lives within this connection. Both presence and absence forms aspect of memory, echoed by the user experience as they sit within the humid air of the pools, which slowly merges the hot oil smells and aromatherapy healing process. So the void space would allow the horizontal planes that are situated within to become mediatory for the combination of worlds. The core represents the historic memory along with the chimney of the soapworks, the heart of the production line, and a key figure on Plymouth waterfront in 1818. Therefore, the unifying element between past, present, and future is a key beacon for tourists and the local community, allowing one to re-acknowledge the chimney structure from my proposal in the new Mill Bay waterfront silhouette. Taking the influence of Aldo Rossi, solid versus skeletal, within the key spaces, the user is trying to engage with the journey, encounter the view, and acknowledge the axes I'm trying to set up. The axes specifically stems from the alignment of the previous location of the Mill Bay soapworks. This connection to the previous infrastructure allows dialogue between old and new to drive the proposal. During the day, the workshop and baths will become active spaces for the local retired residents who can take part in a process of healing through leisure activities, and also a parent and child to learn new skills of soap making and engage with swimming lessons, a key space full of enthusiasm benefiting the society as a collective, mentally and physically benefiting social health. During the evening, these spaces would become passive, and opportunities of openings onto the water would allow users to reflect their voices into the open air. The site is prone to environmental conditions, therefore the future resilience of reacting with the rising sea level and freak flooding opens opportunities of social, political, and ecological factors. Growing research around the underworld of pools and the future possibilities of money and resilient funding for benefits above and below ground. The project explores the recreational stance in the present whilst acknowledging the environmental future. The integration of stratified layers becomes apparent through the materiality. Designing to accommodate the future flooding, hard and soft worlds are created, merging because of the horizontal mediatory thresholds. I have been focusing on model making to explore spatial material exploration through SOAP models, which inform the granular, alive, and diminishing approach I'm taking. The rock salt finished concrete contains bodies of water, along with the specific interiors of the building, such as the memory space, which invites the combination of limestone and copper filings to create a green oxidized facade. When experimenting with copper and concrete, it became over-engineered. Pockets of air appeared, showing the cracks within the solid form, allowing natural imperfections to bleed through to the foreground in correspondence to the framework of bleeding blue into grey. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Georgina. It's so intriguing looking at the visuals. All right, so I think for the second one, I'm going to invite Harrison. I hope he's ready. Harrison Lovelock and his project titled Unsettled Waters, A Tale of Evolving Archetypes. Over to you, Harrison.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, good.
Lovely, super. Wow, I'll just pull this up. So, the Unsettled Waters project offers a proposition for a seagrass research facility and maritime botany exhibit to be introduced to the Mill Bay waterfront. On a programmatic level, this begins to address both social and environmental needs within the wider mission of the City of Plymouth's Resurgent Action Plan to bounce back from the effects of COVID-19. The proposal itself is situated along an axis of projects running between the land and sea, utilising a disused pier in the harbour. The scheme performs as part of the master plan strategy to address the social rips within the tapestry of Mill Bay, whilst reworking the existing fabric of the site's industrial past. The programme stands as one of the introductions to the new urban territory, whilst also expressly addressing the task of reclaiming ecological territory. The programme utilises the conditions created within the Creek Group intervention, beginning to open the public space to all users of the site, being workers, locals, and visitors. Within the wider master plan, the project allows for interaction to and from other programmes within the tapestry. The facility provides the opportunity to educate recreational boaters from the boat builders, showing them how they can fit into a sustainable future and reduce their impact on the ocean, such as using seagrass-friendly anchoring. The boat builders can also provide the facility with the expertise of boat management for keeping up the field trip vessel. The program is set up so that the land bridge which connects to the facility to adjacent projects becomes a journey. In doing so, it can be predicted that the lab will be visited on the way to the nature's catch. Therefore, the facility can provide visitors with edible seaweed to be taken to the restaurant for prepping, cooking, and eating. As well as this, the restaurant provides the workers within the lab to have local lunches. Applied to the scientific backdrop of the program, the perceived understanding of nature becomes a key conversation, expressing itself as industrial project as much as an ecological one, an industry ecology hybrid rather than distinction where either side is left behind. The project employs a series of archetypes using a steampunk analogy as a device to express the hybridization between human and non-human perception within every act within the program, facilitating the development of human perception of nature whereby science is seen not separate from nature, but rather as an integral part of it. In doing so, the scientists become an extension of their work, the visitor is touched directly by the consequences of their action or inaction, and the position of the resident can be understood in terms of natural habitats. Bruno Latour's theory of hybrids helps to aid this narrative by supporting the hypothesis that humans and nature are not separate entities. Latour's hybrid network becomes the framework of the Unsettled Waters project, whereby the subject of biological colonization, marine colonization, and marine biology as a current opposing triad are understood united, refusing the modern project with the project facility at the epicenter. The first expression within this steampunk analogy sets up the conditions required and sows the seed for future dialogue through the performance of experiments. These spaces have specific, special and theoretical needs. The need to move the lab from the practical needs within the practice of science, and the necessity to work as close to water as possible whilst retaining controllable variables on a site with changing sea levels over time. A resilient lab requires elevation out of danger of the impracticality of controllable flooding. Therefore, it becomes necessary to elevate the lab onto a safe plane so to retain resilience over time. This is where the facility begins to set up structural language in reflection of the heron, nimble footings with proud posture. This drawing shows the drawing to the right shows the infrastructure in play. A tower to the north of the site sprouts proud to support future growth within the facility. This becomes a metaphor for the seagrass as a species being grown within the facility, as the length of the blades is not only a fraction of the root network. Between the facility and the tower, a series of chain pulleys run, connecting the key points of movement required within the facility. This being to launch the research vessel, adjust the tidal tank, or reposition the hanging gardens, or simply access the crane for daily needs. This section shows how the facility begins to set up a series of habitats hybridized into a single program of seagrass conservation. The facility becomes one with its surrounding, allowing inhabitants to weave consciously from customary to unfamiliar habitats. To help encourage wildlife to return, the facility retains the stonework materiality expressed around the rest of Mill Bay, as its cracks and imperfections allow for nature to begin to recolonize and live in unison. Upon this base level, the diagram expresses the social nature of the ground floor as a level of artificial construction. The open space between the different sub-programs allows for cross-disciplinary dialogue, fostering new thought of a hybrid nature. Above this, the section uncovers the professional controlled lab spaces in which closed conditions are required. Surrounding these interior spaces, the mechanical apparatus of the reappropriated industrial past encompasses all facets of the facility. The diagram to the right shows the design process of Unsettled Waters, from setting out massing, aligning a grid, and breaking the grid using Alvar Aalto's methodology for avoiding restrictive rectilinear structural grids. The setting out of nodes for motion to travel along the mechanized network can also be seen later in the development. This came from a reflection of the process of growing seagrass, whereby the seagrass cannot be judged based on stature of its leaf, as its resilience comes from its root network. The dodo stands as the epitome of remorse. Any species which becomes extinct due to the human race should hit hard. However, in the UK, we can feel detached from the wider industrial motions in play. This stage of the programme tackles this by drawing out these issues and presenting them on home turf. From this historic reasoning of the colonial exhibit expressing the sorrow of what has been done, then stepping to current context of climate displacement, whether that be flora, fauna, or even human, to then stepping into the future, the resolution of current local efforts to tackle the attack on biodiversity, subsequently resolving climate issues. Within the botanical exhibit, the project continues to implement hybrid thinking, both in experience and physical construction. The recycled silo at the centre of the facility acts as a nod to the site's industrial past, whilst expressing the need for evolution within the industry for survival. The dark archetype tackles the issue of fishing industry within the requiring reappropriation in sustainable future by dissecting an industrial trawler, reusing its apparatus in a context which gives to the local ecology rather than extracting from their fish stocks. This technology is aided by incorporating biorock technology, converting the thin steel structure of the ship's gantry into an adaptable coral hanging garden. This allows the facility to begin reaching out into the surrounding water bodies. This becomes an apparatus for the crane to study whilst also producing habitat for the residents of the water and waterfront alike. Once unified, the facility becomes a living machine, allowing the hybridization of not only thinking of the users, but the surrounding biodiversity. This project consists of an open steel grid with rooms hung within. The enclosed steel structure is designed to be fully serviced by traveling gantry cranes as to create spaces which were interactive and adaptable. This is a flexible framework rather than a static structure which doesn't dictate the use of space over time, but rather allows for suitable programs to be inserted. In its occupation, the structure enables its occupants to discover different facets of activities and allows them the choice of whether to partake or simply spectate. This furthers a statement of importance of responsibility in terms of technology, but also can be implemented to serve public freedom. It exaggerates the capacity of technology to control its environment. Should current climate predictions of a general sea level rise of 2 meters by 2050 be realized, the facility is set up so that it can continue to combat the struggle of climate change. The spaces within are set up to continue to communicate these events through tidal windows and haptic triggering materiality performing between the facility walls and the crashing waves. On the exterior of the building, the gantry will be seen in ever-changing positions, and the hanging gardens will be seen hung higher on the retreat, presenting the effort to spectators and acting as a further and final call to arms. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to announce, for your information, both students, Harrison and Georgina, they are both nominated for the RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects Bronze Medal. Those are an award for the undergraduates. Congratulations to both Harrison and Georgina. All right, okay, so now I would like to call upon the third year student from the Bachelor of Science of Architecture, our degree program, Aizat Sulaiman, and the title of his project is Breath, the Ultimate Jungle Youth Center. Over to you, Aizat.
Okay, can you hear me, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rose. So this is BRAS, I present with BRAS, the Ultimate Jungle Youth Center. So basically, this project is focused about youth center. So about a little bit about the site analysis. So the location was at the Titi Wangsa, which is at the KL urban city, which is in Malaysia. So about the spot analysis, so the strength. So as the site was located at Titi Wangsa, so the strength is the site was abundant by green space around the site and create an ambience of peacefulness and relaxation by the lake. About the weakness, as I said, the site was located at this urban park, so it quite have a middle of the city, so heavy road and traffic urge people to cancel their plan to come to the park. So opportunities. So since the ample green is available, so it proved to be a very good source of relaxation. So about the threats a little bit, so encroachment of land lead to wastage of precious space for nothing rather than creating an unified open space. So about the issues, what is issues that I highlighted? So first, the target group for this project is urban youth and also other communities, so youth. So youth are one of the important population groups in terms of building of the society and moving world forward, and they should be given their own spaces to explore and develop themselves. So living life in an urban area can create a whole world of stress and anxiety. Okay. So the issues, so stress environment, sleep deprived, workaholic, lost income point, and also the main issues is self-care. So how this project that I would like to use to balance and build a strong character. So at a story time, so not a bedtime story. So a stress chronology. So these are the three students. So me and other two my friends. So these are the three example youth with different current situation during this pandemic. So basically me currently at home, and one of my friend Nafis at a rent house around the campus, and the third student Rai, which is stay in the campus. So are they feeling okay? If yes, it's okay. So how about if they feeling no during this pandemic? So and they don't know what to do with all the SOPs, with the lockdown. So they also don't have any sports, so it can lead to stress. So if they don't treat the stress, so what happens? So it leads to the mental illness problem. So this is the stress chronology. So the first case study, so Kengo Kumar architecture, which is capture my eyes a lot. So the first one is Milan's Bioflake Office of the Future. So the Bioflake Office of the Future, where work and nature interact together in harmony in organic or horizontal architecture responding to the surrounding context. So when you see at the tree picture, it feels like welcome and also feeling at work. So reinterpret the concept of work, combining individual wellness and green building solutions. So the first case study. The next, also Kengwa Kumar architecture. So the third building, the second building is Coastal Museum Research Center. So the interesting about this building is, you can see there is no glue was used to build the structure. The wood grid support the structure and also serve as a display space for the item exhibited in the museum. So the design of this structure consists of taking the challenge of creating a medium-scale wood structure by combining small section wood members based on the traditional wooden toy from the Hida Takayama region in Japan. So that's with the case study. So this is a little bit about the sketch development on how I depart from the issues until to solve it. So how to connect all of them. So my aim, goal, and concept. So my aim is to improve overall health and well-being. So the goal, so there are 4 goals. So the first one is to advocate a sense of belonging and promote freedom of expression and have a warm, home-like quality that encourage creating growth for youth. So the second one is create a safe and positive environment for youth to learn, play, explore, and develop skills. The third one, yes, of course, to connect the building occupant with the nature. And then the last one is to balance strong character with a creative spaces. So there will be all the aim and goals. So here's come my concept, nurture plus nature. So nurture youth to a creative space of their own by integrating nature with a playful architecture. So this is BRAS, the Ultimate Jungle Youth Center. So BRAS may be a space that give an individual with a comfortable environment to release stress. And this also the space environment appropriate for refraining by providing greenery and the sound of water fountains that act as normal green environment and makes the individual forget the hectic city life. So this space also will be open for 24 hours to accommodate the most users. Okay, about my programming. So there will be a 6 programming. The first one is yoga area and meditative garden. The second one, there will be a botanical garden at the center of the building. And the third one is mini library and indoor garden. The fourth one is green cafe and vertical garden. The fifth one is spa and massage. And then the last one for the male and female hostel. So there will be a forest cubicle. So how all these 6 programming, so I will cue with biophilic architecture to connect the building occupant with nature. So I also put here the color therapy for the building. So the first one is wood, the second one is camouflage greens, the third one is medium sea green, and then the fourth one is medium forest green, and the last one is dark forest. So this color therapy will enhance their mental, to boost their mental wellness. Okay, so this is the site. At the center, you can see the proposed Y center, U center. At the north, you can see here at the top one, the top on the screen was the lake, the Titi Wangsa Lake. At the right side of the center, proposed center, you can see the administrative building. And then at the left side will be the future development. So this is my first ground floor. So the ground floor is used to be the center of the botanical garden and the interactive healing spaces, which will reflect all the programs and also connect the user and the nature. So the ground floor would be the shape to reflect the welcoming shape to the users and also where all the connection begins. So I highlighted there the center of the botanical garden. So here's also the space of accommodation and the area. So the first floor, you can see there is also the center will be the botanical garden, and I also locate the outdoor gym and also the indoor gym, yoga room, and the indoor games, and also the multi-purpose hall. So move to the second floor, there will be a spa and massage. So meeting rooms and administration will be located at the second floor. So the third floor will be for male occupants. So there will be a 6-pax room, 4-pax room, and 2-pax room. So there will be also a reading area and lounge. And then we move to the 4th floor. There will be also the 6-pax room, 4-pax room, and also 2-pax room. So there will be also a lounge and also a game area. So this is the 4th floor. So now this is a section of the building, as you can see. So at the center of the building, you can see the botanical garden. So this is the south elevation of the building with a scale of 1 to 100. So this is the perspective of the building. So this the view of the building. And then about explosive diagram, as you can see, the first one, the top one will be the solar shading, as Malaysia has a quite hot climate. So it's important to have a solar shading. So this solar shading will act as a lighting in as much as natural light as possible and also reduce overheating for the building. So for this building, I use a pitch roof to ensure the perfect water drainage for the building. And also there will be an open roof to act as a skylight to give a natural ventilation through the building. So the concrete structure will be used as a concrete structure is good insulation heat for the building. So the garden, the botanical garden, is to act as a cooling effect to the building. So this is the sustainable strategies. At the top one, you can see there is a rainwater harvesting with the pitch roof. So the rain will be collected through the gutter and then go through to the rain harvesting water tank. And then there's also an open roof to act as a natural ventilation for the building. So this sun shading for the natural lighting, and at the center, there's a big tree over there, act as a cooling effect. So there is the garden. So this is the sustainable strategies. So I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Isaac, for the presentation. All right, so without wasting any time, I'm gonna invite the second presenter from UPM, Amirah Ghazali, and the title of her project is Malaysia Youth Creative and Innovative Hub. Welcome, Amirah.
Thank you, Dr. Roslina. I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. I'm Amirah Ghazali and I will be presenting my last semester project, which is Malaysia Youth Creative and Innovative Hub. So according to the bar chart, youth unemployment poses pressing challenge for Malaysia for various reasons. Amid this problem, entrepreneurship become a gateway for youth to support themselves. Hence, this project is intended to strengthen the capabilities of youth participants to support their business by being creative and innovative through hands-on mentorship and apprenticeships, which will have the real impact in helping unemployed people. Moving on to the site analysis, the site is located at the Kepong, Kuala Lumpur, which overlooking to the kite flying park and the recreational park. The site is zoned under the sports and recreational area, with various activities happen around the site. And due to the site has the close proximity to an urban park, the center are also cater for the public frequenting the park for leisure activities. Next is the design strategies. The proposed building will be oriented to maximize the view towards the kite flying park and recreational park, as it provides the positive view of the site. And the proposed building will also maximize the use of facilities by the pedestrian from the park. And passive design strategies such as natural ventilation, natural daylight, and sun shading devices are also will be applied. Moving on to the target users. The target user for this proposed building is the school nearby, Kepong Metropolitan Park public visitor, and the youth around Malaysia, which they can stay overnight at the hostel provided. The collaboration is with the Malaysia Global Innovation and Creativity Center and also Ministry of the Youth and Sports. Moving on to the case study, the Merck Innovation Center is located at the Germany, has inspired this project by the space program of their working space. They applied the open plan working space with the bridge connecting them. So for this design, I have come up with the concept of flying high. The flying high concept can be seen directly and indirectly. The other meaning of flying high is be very successful and prosper. Hence, the space are created to support youth empowerment, resulting successful youth with the skills and career. As for the form, it is shown by creating a building that stands out boldly with the sloping form that give the feeling of flying form about to soar up the skies. Next is the form development. The project has the built-up area of 3,000 square meter, and instead creating a large barrier volume, a public permeable communal line is created, offering it as a crossable building. The building is then divided by its zoning, and greenery is added horizontally and vertically. And lastly, slanting form is created to create the visual of soaring upwards. And the last image shows my massing model for this project. And this is the site plan. The building is designed and oriented to the kite park and the recreational park. The green landscaping are designed at the south side of the site with the purpose to design the building more approachable and blend with the surrounding context. Next is the ground floor plan. The ground floor plan are designed for the public with the central plaza, which serve as a multi-purpose events area, such as gathering area, exhibition, and pop-up bazaar. The pop-up bazaar can provide the opportunity for the youth participant to market their product. The other public spaces are gym and cafe that have the view towards the kite park and recreational park. Moving on to the first floor plan, the zoning for the hostel and the youth center facilities are divided by different blocks and connected by a bridge. For this floor, the hostel rooms are designed with the twin sharing en suite, while for the youth center facilities, there are collaborative learning areas which connecting the youth with the skillful and experienced entrepreneur. There are also product exhibition space and prototype making workshop. Moving on to the second floor plan, the room provided are 4 PAX room and 6 PAX room. For the facilities, there will be open plan co-working area which are designed to increase face-to-face collaboration between the participants. The benefit of this open plan is it provides flexibility with opportunity to move around the space. Another space for this youth center facilities is seminar room and resource center. And at the lastly is the third floor plan, which are the hostel area repeated from the floor below. So this is the hostel room layout. Every room are designed with the balcony for viewing purpose as well as for a better ventilation and natural daylight. So moving on to the section, the separation of space are done by the mean of difference in leveling. The ground floor plan are dedicated for the public, while the above floor plan are for the youth participants. The co-working space, seminar room, and the resource center are designed at the top floor of the building to reduce noises coming from the park. Moving on to the sustainable design. For the sustainable design, the proposed building are applying the passive design strategies. The facade system and the overhang act as the shading device to maintain the comfortable level. The green pockets are designed at the center of the hostel block to reduce the heat in building, with the skylight on top to provide a good level of daylighting. This is the elevation from the east and west. And lastly is the perspective. This is the interior perspective for the co-working area at the top, and below is the collaborative learning area. Next is the perspective for the public spaces, which is gym and cafe, which can be seen it is overlooking to the park. And this is the perspective, which is from the view from the main entrance and also the second entrance from the park. And lastly, the overall exterior perspective of the building. So that's all from me. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you to the 4 students from both UPM and University of Plymouth. They are all the undergraduates. And now I would like to invite from UPM, Associate Professor Architect Mio Muhammad Farid, the Design Studio Coordinator for the third year studio, and from University of Plymouth, and the Humphrey, the Program Lead, and to give their overview comments on the presentation from both schools. Architect Mio will appraise students from University of Plymouth, and Mr. Humphrey will comment the work of the students from UPM respectively. You both will be given only 5 minutes each.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Architect Mio.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rose, and thank you to the 4 presenters. A great presentation with your own unique approach towards design. So my appraisal for the Plymouth students from Georgina and Harrison, both having water as the element, and both projects are rooted to community, to the city of Plymouth. And I did visited Plymouth in 2013. So I managed to meet up with Bob and Prof. Alex, and also Chris Naurate now is in Sheffield. I can still vividly remember that the coastal town with the lighthouse. So Georgina's presentation on has that dreamlike quality, almost ethereal, which reflected in her water element of creating a bathhouse, whereas Harrison's took the approach of steampunk, which coincidentally I took my student to see the similar kind of design take last week with my student, because they are working on co-working space, and this space also have the theme of steampunk, which also Harrison reflected in his presentation. Overall, I think both presented the idea scheme very well, the narratives clear, and also the drawings are very exquisite. So congrats to both students. So I pass to Andy for your appraisal.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say thank you to the students for presenting the work this morning. And I think there's something really interesting, primarily about the work that's coming from the students from Future at the moment. And there is this desire and this sense within the architecture, it seems to sort of, after sort of what have been traumatic times, to want to do something which is about actually repairing. It's about healing. It's about giving back. It's an architecture which is not only responding to the idea of how individuals, and I think what's really interesting is they focus on youth. They focus on the next generation, which is fantastic from that point of view. And actually sort of within that sort of situation, there's primarily this idea of sort of, should we say, time exchange between sort of what would be sort of a younger population and potentially an older population that may well be working with those spaces as well. But there's this idea of sort of this acknowledgement of exchange, this idea of contemplation, of pause, of repair, of wanting to give back. The sensitivity within those, I think, is really, really clear then within the way in which environmental consideration is offered, primarily, not only obviously sort of through materials, through biomorphic, or in a sense through the idea of sort of, you know, the concrete as being this retainer, or sort of brise-soleil as this kind of moderator between things, but it's also within the volumetric understanding of the architectural position, i.e. sexually, to allow the projects in themselves to begin to want to respond to a kind of a passive understanding of how spaces just need to operate and breathe naturally, rather than that dependency upon what I would call sort of, you know, kind of an artificial condition through sort of a whole series of M&E kit going in to rectify the problems that architects generally design in the first instance. So I think from those points of view, that position going forwards is a joy to see that actually sort of, and I think it's from all students who presented today, the idea and consideration of the key concerns which we are all facing today is kind of absolutely sort of embedded in their thinking going forwards. And I think we as the academics need to also sort of catch up with these guys and respond to those desires and dreams as we go forwards. And so I'd really like to thank you both and all four of you for the presentations this morning. They were really, really stimulating. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Architect Mio and Mr. Humphrey, for the very valuable and motivational feedbacks. I think the student would love to hear those comments. All right, okay, next, fellow audience, we are now at the second part of the symposium. We will be having students from MArch program to present their works, and similarly, they will be given 10 minutes each. Okay, from the Master of Architecture UPM, I'm going to invite Ahmad Ashrani Daud, and his project is titled Spatial Justice in Fragmented Neighborhood. Okay, I'd like to welcome Ashrani.
Hello, good afternoon and good morning for those who are in Plymouth. Thank you, Dr. Roslina, for the introduction. My name is Ahmad Ashrani Bendao, and I'll be presenting my architectural design thesis project titled Towards a Spatial Justice for Public Realm in Spatially Fragmented Neighborhood. From the title, the two main body of knowledge explored in the design thesis are spatially fragmented neighborhoods and spatial justice. Spatially fragmented neighborhood can be considered to be the dominant urban landscape in Klang Valley. Its function by that any usage of space automatically privatizes at the price of undermining the common public realm. This refers to how the rights of residents and communities in gated and guarded neighborhoods for self-preservation and security is done at the expense of public spaces, public life, and solidifying the concept of otherness among people. The thesis uses Michel Foucault's concept of heterotopia, which are spaces that are somehow other, disturbing, or incompatible. One of the principles of heterotopia is that it exists in crisis. The crisis of access and safety can be seen with the guardhouses of these gated communities, where it controls the permission for public access. Any member of the public would have to give a certain proof of not doing harm in order to access it. Heterotopias also juxtapose in a single space several incompatible spatial elements. This can be seen in how public spaces are being commodified, where playgrounds and facilities have become privatized for a selected few who can afford to purchase and live in the property. Heterotopia spaces also have a specific operation in relation to other spaces as compensation. This is apparent in how public facilities are institutionalized, where one would have to subscribe to a certain religious belief in order to access it. The current practice of neoliberal urbanism has created neighborhoods with a strong central-periphery relationship to the metropolitan region, with segregated built environment features such as wide boulevards and perimeter barriers. These wide boulevards enable private vehicles to leave and enter the neighborhood at such speed to allow residents to access the Kuala Lumpur metropolitan region. The residents leave the neighborhood in order to have access to an urban life, whether in the downtown or in the mega malls across the metropolitan region. This robs the neighborhood for any discernible town center or any public urban life. The study has established the socio-spatial patterns of a spatially fragmented neighborhood by using architectural ethnography. The patterns illustrated how the fragmented urban landscape has such a strong influence towards the residents that any usage of space by the communities are further perpetuated the undermining of the public realm. In the selected case study of Prima Sojana neighborhood in Kajang, Selangor, it is observed that street vendors would appropriate the public realm, such as pedestrian paths. This prevents the paths from being usable to the public and hence become spaces for commercial activities to happen. There are also instances where residents who live in a single loaded road would appropriate the empty space opposite of their property to be used for vehicular storage or personal farming and landscaping. The lack of proper facilities in the neighborhood, as they are not prioritized in a capitalistic urban development, also forces daycare center to be operated in the existing housing block in the neighborhood. An audit of the land use distribution of the neighborhood showed spatial injustices for the public realm to the under-provision of quality public spaces. In the selected case study neighborhood of 700 acres, 30% of the land has been used for road surfaces, which is almost equivalent to land use for residential houses, which is at 32%. While most of these roads are public road, its usage are further privatized by the gated and guided neighborhoods phenomena, and the roads are also only beneficial for the usage of private vehicles rather than serving a thorough public transportation network. Green and open space occupy 7% of the total land use, which equals to 55.8 acres. This would have to be shared by around 37,000 residents, which leaves per resident an open space around 5 square meters, which is half of a single parking spot. As a response to this empirical land audit and the architectural observation of the neighborhood, the design thesis proposed a scheme for a public space reclamation of a boulevard as a spatial justice of public realm. This reclamation is for all communities and individuals that are fragmented by their built environment to come together in a shared public space where public realm is upheld. The spaces designed for public realm reclamation includes not only outdoor spaces such as sitting areas and sports courts, but include a street library as well, as a showcase of the full potential for the proof of concept. The public space reclamation is spearheaded by the Neighborhood Technical Workshop building to produce, supervise, and maintain the public realm and its values. This building consists of several workshop areas and storages for equipment and construction materials needed to produce and reclaim public realm in the neighborhood. The selected pilot site of the public space reclamation is the 500-meter-long Boulevard Prima Saujana, which has the symptoms of spatially fragmented neighborhoods that the public space reclamation could respond to. During weekends, there can be around 30 street vendors popping up along the boulevard. There is also an open green space that is separated by a large stormwater drain that is cut off from the public access, which is a symptom of a spatially fragmented neighborhood. The different residential subdivisions also fragmented from each other, thus lack a common public realm to be shared by all. The selection of the pilot site enables a design generator of applying a road diet by extending the massing of the adjacent row houses. These massings are then hollowed out to leave the party wall that would then be occupied by the public realm. A Woolworth approach that created a sinuous road on an existing straight boulevard intended to create a traffic calming atmosphere to alert drivers that they have entered a pedestrian public realm. A pedestrian bridge with ramps on both ends connect the public realm to the adjacent open green space and residential communities, thus improving the pedestrian permeability in the neighborhood. From the perspective, you can see the relationship between the neighborhood technical workshop building and the public realm reclamation works. The building has the necessary space required to manufacture and assemble the construction parts needed to produce more public realm in the neighborhood. The workshops are stacked on top of each other to minimize the building footprint, and the building facade is adorned with pivoting windows that allows the circulation of clean air into the workspace in a tropical climate. Moving to the public space reclamation proposal, the pedestrian bridge doubles as a roof which allows street vendors to continue to operate without undermining the public realm. Rationalizing the street vendor looks at how the street vendor can benefit from the public realm reclamation with increased potential customers from pedestrians and existing motor vehicles as well. The circular pedestrian bridge was designed to avoid any dead ends for pedestrian safety, and its shape informs the amphitheater seating at the street level below. The general outdoor spaces are lined with shady trees and ample seating to maximize its usage in a hot and humid tropical climate. Moving along further down the boulevard, the public realm spatial program evolves to a street library with reading corners and recreational sport courts. The street library are equipped with pivoting walls that doubles as bookshelves to advertise reading materials and encourages a reading behavior for the residents. A multi-purpose room that could transform into classrooms or seminar rooms allow the community to actively participate and share in a public realm. The recreational spaces also intended to provide a variety of options of activities such as basketballs and badminton that goes beyond the prescribed landscaping of open fields and playgrounds in the neighborhood. As a conclusion, the design thesis hope to shift the value of public space from the least valuable in a capitalist development to the most valuable wealth of public space to be shared by all in a civil and sustainable society. The public realm as a physical space can be likened to a well-made Persian carpet that can be entered and enjoyed and shared by all. It can be lush and depicting visions of oases on earth, and it beautifies any urban landscapes in it. Thank you, and that is my presentation.
Okay, interesting. All right, now I would like to ask upon Ron Chua to present his project, and the title of the project is Urban Getaway.
Hi, I hope you can hear my voice.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Can you see that? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Ron. The topic of my thesis is Urban Gateway, and alternative paradigms towards rural evolution. So the initiation of this thesis is based on the dramatic global rise of the urbanization, which reflects the urban-centric zeitgeist on part of the modernism. So urbanization, often conceived as an generic universally replicable type of human settlement. As a result of the urban bias, to develop the rural is to turn it into an intensive, physically overwhelming urban city that often delocalize the very essence of the rural setting. Urban-rural dichotomy often portrayed as an antithetical dualism rather than a neutral pair. It shows the symptom of inequality of the physical performance as well as the inequality of the public perception between the urban and the rural. So, the thesis confronts such challenges through the rural evolutionary resilience, which is to bounce forward, to transform in order to respond to the conventional urban planning. Here, I like to quote the words from Christopher Lee: "The city and its quality of prosperity, civility, and stimulation can be infused with the very essence of the rural to transform the rural setting into an unique habitat." And this has led to the thesis vision of the rural-urban connectivity that highlights the significance of the emerging technology as well as the possibilities and opportunities from the urban. At the same time, the changes and challenges, the environmental wellness, as well as the cultural diversity of the rural. So to sum up, this framework highlights the need to establish the constructive rural-urban interaction through the approach of the two-way adaptation of the cultural identity and technology, eventually to achieve an intensified rural performance as well as the positive public perception. So as for the site, the selected site is in Malaysia due to the increasing urban population. The macro site selection focuses on the regions in Bentong, Pahang due to the proximity to the urban area, the demographic trend of the rural-urban crossing, and the development trait of the rural-urban shifting, as well as the difficulty in accessing to the urban facilities. Well, the microsite selection then focused down at the Kampung Bukit Tinggi, based on the sensitivity to the intensive development, its connectivity to the social capital and resources, as well as the site exposure. So for your information, the state of Pahang is the least urbanized state that is adjacent to the KL, Kuala Lumpur metropolitan, which is the most urbanized state in Malaysia. Kampung Bukit Tinggi is a small rural town surrounded with a tropical rainforest. It is located along the highway, which is approximately 1 hour driving distance from Kuala Lumpur and 2 hours from the Kuantan city. By looking into the morphological pattern of the site, the proposed site shows the predominantly greenscape, whereas the urban city represents the physical overwhelmed figure ground. The site is very close to the urban city, and such high-intensive spatial diffusion is getting closer and closer as it sprawls. Apparently, there is a problem of the urban planning that is triggering the locals, and they are protesting against such intensive urbanization to safeguard their rural home. So based on the interview, the inhabitants of the Kampung Bukit Tinggi are not against the development as long as it is sustainable. The site is actually a 4.7 acre site plot adjacent to the highway, and the building programs focuses on the economics output like digital agri-food hub, including the cloud farm or the cloud kitchen, and also the economic input through the digital stores as well as the co-working space. Besides, the logistics also play an important role in the rural-urban connectivity. The massing of the urban gateway is a tower-formed landmark that enhance the visibility from the highway and support the activities in the cloud. It is designed with a progressive build-up from the ground to the cloud to minimize the building footprint while not compromising the agricultural function on the ground. Then the design tries to preserve the existing green infrastructures as well as to avoid the service land deep into the landscape. Then the greenhouse as public space connected to the farmland and is guided by the intangible unpaved pedestrian, which is formed by the street vendors. The landscape is integrated with the agricultural and aquacultural activities, and finally, some of the consideration of the blue infrastructures. So the urban gateway is developed into 3 main building blocks, integrated with the agri-production supply from the chicken coop, greenhouse, and the floating field. So the building of urban cloud market, it serves as the rural-urban trade center that emphasizes the interrelatedness and the interdependency of the rural and urban economics. Basically, the programs designed, including the cloud kitchen, to outreach the products from the rural to the urban, and also the digital stores to enable the inflow of the urban goods. The building of urban crossover serve as the logistics center that connect the rural site and the urban cities. It is completed with the warehouse function from the picking and distribution to the packing and packaging, staging and dispatch, and finally to the drone port or the airship fulfillment center. The building of urban co-working space, it supports the off-premise employment to enable the diversity of jobs or profession in the rural setting, and the users can subscribe and utilize the facilities in the co-working space. So the architectonic of the urban gateway is expressed through the structural approach of the core frame supporting system. It is a mixed permanent structural system, which is the concrete core, and a supporting system, which is a steel frame that hosts the collective programmatic or the programmable plugins. So the breakdowns of the modules in the urban cloud market, including the cloud kitchen, outdoor dining, drone pod, and digital stores. And the modules in the urban crossover building, including the warehouse, collective storage chambers, drone pod, and the airship fulfillment center. And lastly, the plugins in the co-working space, including the digital lab, live stream studio, workstation, and so on. So this approach enables a complete liberalized modules plugins. It allows the possibilities of removing and substituting the modules over the time in the building life cycles. So in contrast to the urban concrete jungle, which focus on the singularity and homogeneity, the design of the urban gateway is rather the assemblage of multiplicity and showing the heterogeneity and informality of the rural setting. In conclusion, the thesis ideation highlights the antithetical dualism of the urban-rural dichotomy and also the issue of the fixity and rigidity in the conventional urbanization. The habitants in Kampung Bukit Tinggi are protesting against the intensive urbanization, which is disruptive for the environment and also their home. Finally, the hypothetical model of the urban gateway is proposed, and perhaps it can contribute to the rural evolution towards an equal value system with the urban counterpart. Thank you. Yeah, that's it for my presentation.
All right, thank you, Ron. We are going to the next part. I'm going to call MH a student from MH Architecture, University of Plymouth, and the first presenter is Roberta Vasnik, and the title of the project is Center for the Native Food.
Thank you. Can you please confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
If I put it in full screen, yes?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So I will actually be presenting two parts of my project. The infancy of the project starts with the master plan, followed by the second part of the project, which is the building proposition, the Center of Native Food. So the area of investigation for the academic year 2020-2021 was Stonehouse, situated adjacent to the center and hugged in between the military base, Devonport, and the retail center in Plymouth, UK. Just a few words about Stonehouse. Stonehouse is formed by two polarized parts, divided by Union Street, which comes straight through the middle, which acts as a wall or as a barrier between the two desperate parts, the north and the south. The north of Stonehouse has access to the ocean and is formed by a more privileged community, whereas the south is exactly the opposite. So the following projects will cover the first and the second phase of our academic agenda that contains a proposed master plan and a building proposition located in Stonehouse and respectively Stonehouse Creek. The pillars of the following projects are education, economy, and ecology. So what are we doing? The imminent threat of climate change is our catalyst, and the domino effect that follows, such as the sea level rise, the freshwater pollution by the seawater and its effect over agriculture, food scarcity, and the predicted population increase scenario by 2050. So our agenda is to reevaluate local resources to create a symbiotic system that can reinstate circular economy and to create a self-sustained community, to repurpose the urban fabric to sustain life in a time of environmental distress, to utilize landscape to sustain an urban food system, to unify the two desperate parts of Stonehouse North and Stonehouse South, and to stitch Stonehouse into Plymouth urban fabric as a uniform city, to reinstate marine citizenship, because Plymouth is known as the first ocean city in the UK, and to reevaluate buildings and achieve regional revival. And why do we do that? Because of the vulnerability of coastal cities to sea level rise and the domino effect that follows. So the first part of the project was the master plan. The first step was to open Stonehouse Creek to allow, which formerly was a body of water, which reactivates the memory of the site, and to mitigate the effects of sea level rise over the urban fabric. The second step is to create a green barrier to increase biodiversity and also to act as a wetland, because there is predicted rainfall increase. The third part is to divert traffic to prioritize pedestrian access and to improve walkability, and also to reinstate the connectivity between Stonehouse, Devonport, and the city centre, and for active frontages for the shop to support economy. The fourth step was to introduce permaculture sites by reclaiming street parking spaces on Union Street especially, brownfields dotted across the city, and to use the ocean as a medium of growing food, and repurposing vertical walls of buildings. And finally, the fifth step was to introduce a renewable energy system using the ocean, wind, and solar exposure to feed into the energy grid. So in conclusion, we have evaluated the regional resources and used the sea level rise as a source of prosperity. So our three pillars, education, economy, and ecology, we have addressed them under the umbrella of the UN Sustainable Goals. We have achieved addressing these three pillars through a series of interventions that have also introduced the second part of our agenda, the building preposition, which echoes the work on the first project. This is Union Street re-envisaged with green transport and reclaiming spot for urban permaculture. So the second part of the project is the building preposition. My primary focus was to utilize the landscape to supplement the function of the building and not the other way around. The building footprint is minimized to allow the usage of landscape as an educational platform of food production, research, and climate change. The Center of Native Food aims to create a link between the two adjacent educational institutes, but also at a larger scale to enclose the food system proposed for Plymouth through our master plan. This project seeks to promote nature-based solutions to adapt to climatic changes and to reinstate resilience for vulnerable coastal cities. So, as you can see on the left, on the corner left, that's the existing site, that's Stonehouse Creek, and trying to create a dialogism between landscape, and the building. And I hope that through this project, we can rethink buildings and the environment and the landscape as a union between the two that can symbiotically work together and holistically function together with the community. And I hope this project will offer a change of perspective and hopefully a change of culture. So due to the vast footprint of the site, trying to find the area of intervention was quite difficult, but overlaying the grid of the buildings and the streets on top and projecting them over this vast space has given me the area of intervention and has also revealed the connectivity, the possible connectivity between the two sites. Therefore, the lines that you see here in orange, yellow, and blue reflect the circulation, the possible circulation between people, the possible connectivity between the two institutes, educational institutes, and the flow of water. I should also mention that my theoretical background for this preposition was the metaphysics of void, which is a theory that came out from opening a dialogue with the site and due to the vast area of the site. So just quickly of how did I came out with the final form, projecting the grid, looking at the intersection between the grid that revealed this grid and trying to simplify the lines within these dots, which gave me one focus point, which I knew that is where the intervention will be. And also applying Cartesian dimensions revealed the form of the void that I started working with. After previous iterations, I have come to the conclusion that the most important part of the building is the cognitive void. The cognitive void is reflected through the areas of gathering, social gathering, and especially circulation spaces. And instead of enclosing them within four walls and a roof, I gave them back to the landscape to allow this dialogism between landscape and built form to formulate. So I started first with the landscape, primarily because the power and the powerful tool that we have on the site is that the landscape can support food production and the landscape can create this community epicenter. So addressing again climate change and the sea level rise, we looked at, as I said, reflooding Stonehouse Creek, using this riverbed, overlaying on top with the earth that was used from digging up, opening up the Stonehouse Creek into farming pockets, also stormwater attenuation systems through the usage of landscape and no other technology. So first is, as I said, the landscape. The landscape is used for producing food. Therefore, the laboratories that normally I would have enclosed within the center of native food they're actually situated on the outside of the building. The circulation is giving back to the land. And as I said, it acts as a platform of education and economy. It reinstates circular economy, and also it allows the community to educate the next generation through the concept and the culture of food. So as I said, I talked a little bit about the cognitive void, the functional void, which is primarily just the inhabited space, is reduced to a minimum to reduce the footprint over the site and not to overtake the site, but rather to empower the landscape. So it's reduced to, the footprint is reduced to a minimum. You can see this module, these module pods that are formed from materials that with the decay of the building becomes part of this microclimate in Stonehouse Creek. So it actually becomes a live laboratory. Just a little bit about the configuration inside. the reason that these pods are the way they are is not just to minimize their footprint over the landscape, but also to allow further expansion if needed, and to allow flexibility and resilience for the next generations. So in the end, this dialogism between the form and the landscape has led me to this intervention, which I hope that it builds this regional revival and brings the community together. And I hope this building can provide this culture change of the concept behind it is that buildings should be more we should think about buildings as being generational, to allow flexibility, adaptability, and resilience in a time of fast climatic change, and to change the culture of water as an invasive element, but rather as a source of prosperity for our cities and source of food for the next generations. That's me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roberta. It's very important topic and issues indeed. All right, thank you. I'm going to call upon now Christopher Trigg, and his project is titled Embedded Theatre of Convergence. Welcome, Chris.
Hi. As usual, I'm left wondering how to follow such amazing presentations. Let me just see. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my share screen.
Roberta has to unshare, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking for the button. Sorry, go on, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I might have to rejoin the WebEx a second. One minute. This is giving me some problems.
So Chris is our last presenter for today. Last but not least.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me over there?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see your screen, Chris.
Okay. Sorry about that. My computer was refusing to let me share screen.
All right, it's coming now.
Right.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Yeah.
Right. Let's just see if I can get this full screen. Amazing. So similar to some of the other presentations, my work will focus less on the building itself and more on the theory that's kind of built me to this point, and then kind of diving into some of the stuff that I'm really interested in the moment. So my kind of main interests at the moment lie around kind of play in the urban environment and in buildings themselves, and how that can come to allow people to know space. Kinesthetic dialogue, so the way in which people interact with buildings and public environment and build memories from that, and the way those memories, those positive interactions, can allow people to reinvent and reperceive space. So from that, I've got lots of key questions that are listed down here that I'll kind of let you read. But the main ones I am focusing on this year is how can play let us know and re-know space? How can then kinetics build upon that? And how can these factors allow us to create a new ownership of ground and a better sense of place and right to the city in 2021? So this is a little screen grab from my project last year, Embedded Theatre of Convergence, which is a community kitchen sited in Northern Stonehouse, an area which has a succinct difficulty with food insecurity and income insecurity, and a cycle of dependence on food banks and charity associations. So understandably, there's a pretty difficult attitude towards regeneration present in Stonehouse, because there's been so many incomplete, incognizant efforts towards regeneration that are very much kind of drop-down schemes that are assumed to work consistently. So coming into my project 2A, my urban strategy, we immediately addressed that we'd need to create very small kind of catalytic interventions that then brought people together, and then upon that a new economy and a new food system could be built. So this image here kind of shows one of those catalytic interventions that's built around play. So it brings people together around an old structure, which was a large theatre in the 1920s, and reuses that space and that surface, which is a kind of transitory node, as this new play park for all ages, and kind of gets people to come together around that and start a communal dialogue. And that language very much followed through all the way through this first project, creating those little nodes in key points across the city, and then creating catalytic interventions around those. So over here, we've got a tram depot that then connected the city better. We've got a new arts and culture district shown, all of this shown in model here, and then a new economic initiative built around sustainable shipping. So I won't go into that too much because it can go on for quite a while, but here I'm kind of showing how there's these new food initiatives and kind of spaces of play are built around these nodes, and then from that, hopefully it engages the community directly in a more sensitive way and then builds upon that effort. So kind of what I was saying a minute ago, there was succinct issues with food insecurity, mental health and physical well-being after COVID, with lots of people being cooped up for a while, creating succinct problems with things like dementia and Alzheimer's. And then issues of kind of sense of place, building upon rituals that are there, and a succinct non-place that was present as well. So then I had these key principles that have kind of stuck with me since, which is kind of gathering and convergence, commensality, which is the act of eating around the table, which then gave birth to the community kitchen, play, and healing as a general overall arc. So in the early inception of my project, I was looking at how, when I was creating this initial structure, I wanted to see how I could embed more tactile and playful elements in the building structure, knowing that play is something that allows children especially and adults to re-perceive space and reimagine it. I wanted the building to be something that could be taken on and reinvented. So here I've got a kind of a kinetic wall that started to experiment with playing with the transience of the space. So as people walk through the space, the kinetic wall kind of reacts to that and tries to get people to interact with the building itself. And then later on, creating kind of vertical elements and kind of actual surfaces that are purely for play and purely for reinvention and appropriation. So here there's a little stop motion trying to show how children might kind of appropriate the surface and make marks on it and create something of their own, a stage of their own that they can then keep that memory with them. And then again, following that language across the many different points of the building as I continued its development. So then that eventually resulted in this series of structures, a node of convergence at the top, which was meant for sharing of culture and theatre and production, because another succinct problem in Stonehouse is that there isn't really many places of representation. There are a few different community developments that allow people to speak their voice, but there's not really anywhere that people can come together and celebrate the diversity that's there. So, and then you have the community kitchen here, and then lots of services play weaved within that. And then more specifically showing those key spaces there. So here you have the kind of many different levels of play integrated within the building, and then the main space here where people are kind of coming together around these communal meals, sharing memories, sharing stories, and sharing that multiplicity. So that's what my project was. And then I've taken these questions into my second year, and I'm now starting to experiment with it a little bit more. So how does play allow us to know space, and how does play heal us is obviously one of those key things I was talking about. And specifically in Stonehouse, which was completely ravaged by the First and Second World War, after the Second World War, a lot of the broken structures were taken on by children and taken on by people. And the community immediately started to come back together because of the really distinct communal ties that were there. And then now I'm saying, in a very fragmented landscape that we have now in Stonehouse and Plymouth in general, can structures that involve people and engage with people then spark that new discussion that could happen? So looking at kinetics in particular in that. So then this graphic here is supposed to show how there's this old layout stone house that had a very rich multiplicity. It got people to come together. And then because of the network of connections in place, those conversations and the dialogue that was there, can then a series of interventions, very much like my first project, get people to come together, know each other better, and then try and form a new ownership upon that. So then that kind of played into the first project of this year, which was titled The Ludotopia. So saying, can the city as an entire vessel after a tragedy, so this was kind of a narrative that I created saying, Plymouth has been absolutely destroyed in 2100 by flooding, but the city has reinvented itself and reinvented its fabric through play. So it's definitely playing on the utopia idea of that, saying that it's meant to be a very joyful vessel and people are reconceiving the city through this joyful notion. And now in Project One, we're kind of looking back again to that morphology of the city and seeing how it kind of grew up and evolved. The quality is terrible, I'm sorry about that. But seeing how there were those distinct connections through the dialogue and how this network was born out of that. But then in specific areas of the city's development, where is it? There were kind of particular moments like World War II and poorly informed regeneration efforts on the city, which kind of cut away at this network and fragmented it a lot more. So one particular example of that was the hard form Abercrombie plan that set out the city as a regional kind of series of blocks and completely swept aside Stonehouse and other regions of the city to embrace a more consumerist, separated ideology. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment, interrogating this idea of the city as an interconnected network of things. And then upon that, hopefully, in my next project, I'll be employing more kind of features of play, kinetics, and trying to bring a greater understanding of the city as something that's tied together through these rituals and these celebrations rather than a built form itself. I hope that all makes sense and doesn't sound ridiculous. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, both Roberta and Chris have won the Gold Prize and Honorable Mention in an International Creative Conscience Awards, and with their team members, Sarah Paxton, Leah Denning, and Onadeko. Okay, Irene Temi Onadeko. All right, so I'm gonna invite now. Thank you to all, Ashrani, Ron, Roberta, and Chris. Now I would like to invite from University of Plymouth, Professor Robert Brown, the program lead of MH program, and Architect Wan Sophia from UPM, the coordinator for the master program, again to give their overviews of the master student works. Okay, first I'm gonna like to call Professor Brown to comment on the UPM students.
Salam, and thank you to the presenters. Really enjoyed the presentations, and thank you also for the invitation to speak here today. I think what I'm struck by in seeing the presentations by Ron and Asani is the commonality of work with the students from Plymouth. And I think that comes through in orientation of their work, the themes explored, and the methodologies used. And to pick up on those in detail, what struck me about the orientation was the way that students from Putra have approached their work grounded in a thesis. We don't use that word so much. We talk about a critical inquiry towards praxis, but it's very common in terms of what you are doing with what our students are asked to do. And the work's very much situated in the context of theory. That is, the students are theorizing an agenda. And within that, there seems to be a search for alternatives and a simultaneous questioning of inherited practices. So an opening up in the students' work to explore other possibilities. In terms of themes, there seems to be a real emphasis on people and the urban and climate as well. And with regards to people, the propositions are framed towards contributing to improvement of people's cultural, ecological, economic, or social livelihoods. So the propositions are as much about what they do for people's lives as they are about any distinct artifact in and of themselves. And I thought that came through very well when your students were speaking about the interrelatedness of these strategies. Another aspect that I think is in common between the two groups of students is the use of the word civil, which came up in one of the presentations, notably around the idea of engaging with the other. And within the work, the public realm is reimagined to accommodate and re-envision our interrelatedness with what is often referred to as the other. And there is a consistent reference to how do we engage with people who are often marginalized from the public space. And within that, I would extend that by saying that there seems to be a valuing of the possibility of multiplicity in the city as opposed to singular agendas, and how people might appropriate space from hegemonic forces. So within the work, there's a real challenge to dualisms, to the idea of a totalized urban landscape, and again, an embrace of multiplicity, even an embrace of a certain degree of messiness, which I personally welcome. And I think that final two comments I'd make relate to methodologies. And for me, the range of representations seen in the two students' work from Putra reflect, I feel, an ongoing search for an architectural language. There wasn't a set way of working, but rather a degree of exploration that reflects freedom for individual students to find their own way, but also something that's being engaged at the studio level in terms of taking on that challenge of defining a language of representation that can operate effectively at the urban scale as well as at the building scale. And I think that the final thing that comes through is notions of climate. Obviously, in Plymouth, we're dealing with a very different climate than you experience in Kuala Lumpur. Certainly, my memories of visit some years ago are marked by how warm it was compared to the normal climate in the UK. But I think quite rightly, each group of students are trying to come to grips with that and understanding the implications of that on both design practice and everyday inhabitation. So well done with all the work, really enjoyed it. And again, thank you for the opportunity to participate here.
All right, thank you, Prof. Brown. Okay, now I would like to invite architect Wan Sophia. It's mute. Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Prof. Brown, for your nice words towards our students' works just now. First, before I proceed with my feedback or comments, I would like to congratulate Roberta as well as Chris for receiving the awards. I think that's a very motivating. I'll give comment or my feedback on individuals' work. On Roberta, I can see that there's a very strong agenda in pushing architecture or the boundaries of architecture or built environment to be used as the means towards humanity. So in that sense, that's also there's a similarity in the approach that we try to advocate or suggest to the students' work here in UPM. And I also like her strong considerations to the memory and the pattern, the existing pattern of the context, where these memories and patterns is not just related to human patterns and human habits and patterns, but also to the habit and patterns of the natural environment, the water and the existing landscape as well. I think that is very commendable. That should be the new approach, or the agenda should be should be pursued further by future students. The third thing that I like is that the attempt to capitalize the potentially rising water as something that can be used as an architectural agenda, where you actually use this as a opportunity to build up food resources, where there is a commonalities between or bridging between human and water and the landscape, and your agenda in pushing the landscape forward and architecture second, I think that's very commendable. And I think we should see that, that's what I mean by having architecture as the means for humanity rather than having architecture as the end game for architecture. So that's very refreshing. For Chris, there's a lot of things that he pursued, which is very much my personal interest that I also try to pursue or advocate at University Putra. I like the way that he looks at the commonalities between building and architecture and human activities, where buildings and people actually becoming actors in the built environment rather than looking at architecture as a container and people just the occupants. So that's very interesting. And these commonalities between architecture and the user becoming common actors, creating such a poetic space that constantly changing and having constant dialogue between the two. I think that's a very strong narrative that I find commendable. The other thing that I like about Chris' work is that this idea of kinetic or capitalizing, or maybe perhaps looking at architecture not as a stagnant, grounded and permanent or deterministic in that sense, but using human to actually create kinetic or human kinetic to adopt that or adapt that into architecture as well, where architecture can become there's also movement and in architecture as well. So this is like what we try to do here. We have sometimes we pursue on this idea of transformable architecture, where architecture cannot be deterministic and serving singular function, but future architecture should be able to transform itself to accommodate various functions throughout the day, because our built environment here is very much inefficient, whereby we use our house just 8-10 hours a day. Most of the time it's empty. So I think Chris' approach will explore that potential where architecture and built environment and city can actually serve humanity by constantly changing, creating this network and connectivity between built environment and people as common actors in that sense. So good luck with everyone's pursue in architecture, and hopefully you will create new generations that will change the future. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you to both of you. A very insightful comment from both architect Wan Sophia and Prof. Brown. There are a lot of new ideas and knowledge that we can take away from both the students' work and the feedbacks from the academics, especially on important issues such as on people, humanity, climatic, and the environment, yeah, among others. Okay, now, audience, I would like to invite, I think this is the end, yeah, of the students' presentation. I would like to invite again Prof. Tariani to give her concluding remarks. And following that, Associate Professor Dr. Zaki, the head of the department, will also present his last words.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roslina. So I just wanted to start off by thanking the students for what were very clear and thoughtful presentations, but also designs. They were an absolute pleasure to listen to. And I also wanted to thank the staff who gave appraisal comments, because I thought the focus on the particular aspects of the project was a real pleasure to listen to. I think the event for me is really about a transcultural or transnational architectural education exchange. And I would like to thank you at UPM for organizing this event, because this is really the start of something that I think will open up our understandings of place, architectural design and thinking in relation to the climate and ecology in Malaysia and in the UK. So I think as a first event, it's been magnificent. So thank you very much. And I look forward to what we come up next with in order to meet and share more of the work we're each doing. But it was a real pleasure to be involved in it. And thank you very much to everybody. Over to you, Associate Professor Ahmed.
Dr. Zaki, yeah. Dr. Zaki, you're mute.
That always happens. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
To me, the most important thing that happened today is the opening up of perspectives. You know, the breadth of looking at architectural education from, maybe we can say that, a third person's view, and having the insight from that perspective is very, very refreshing. Already I can see that, you know, the presentation from Plymouth, you know, there is a marked difference in the way the issues are approached. And I believe most of us, even the lecturers, are gaining something very valuable in the way we look at architectural education. I think the process of exchanging ideas, you know, of sharing between two diverse culture is valuable and tremendous in opening up, you know, new perspective, new discussion, new way of looking things. And I believe, you know, the same could be said from Plymouth side, you know, looking at, I believe when you listen to our students' presentation, you realize that there are a lot of interesting, intricate problems in our culture here in terms of our climate, our socio-economics. I would invite, if any of your students would like to try a challenging, you know, context to do your thesis, you know, come over here and you will have a very rich challenging intricacies to solve, you know. So yeah, I really enjoyed what happened today, and I hope, you know, this is the first of many such activities between the two schools. Today is a very sort of a very formal and very official kind of engagement. I would hope that in the future, you know, the interaction between the two schools would be much more fluid. You know, we can get rid of the protocols and the unnecessary. If we can have an MOU between the two schools, then we can have more fluid interaction between the two studios. Why not in the future? Let's say if you know, Associate Professor Mio is having a crit, and just open an invitation, send the link to Plymouth, you know, for any of the students to join, or even to give comments on each other, that would be great. I think that would be something. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. I really enjoyed the session today. It's an eye-opening event for me, myself personally, and I believe for many of the lecturers, you know, looking at, and it is comforting to see a lot of the issues explored by the students are issues which are very important for their futures. You know, talking about climate change, talking about community, you know, water issues. These are all important issues which should be given attention by the new generation, as you probably by now have decided that the mess was created by our generation, you know, and it is your duty now to make the world a better place for your generation, you know? And we hope that our experience, our past mistake would be a lesson to everybody, that the future would be a better place for everybody. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the session and hope we can have more such event and more interaction. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, students and academics from both Malaysia and UK, we have come to the end session of the symposium. I feel so honored to moderate the seminar and hope to be able to see more collaborations such as this in the near future. The new norm resulted the pandemic has somehow made this kind of event and collaboration as much closer to everyone, yeah, and easily accessible more than before. Besides informing students from both sides on the similarity and differences in design approach between the two schools, the symposium also improved the communication skill, especially our students at the international levels. So once again, hope to see you all again and continue to support events such as this. And again, we have the link in the Facebook and YouTube, and you can always come and see the material there. And I saw a lot of links in the chat box too. The work of students from Plymouth and Malaysia there, yeah. And any question, audience, you can post on the Facebook comments and YouTube comments. And here I would like to announce the promotional news of our design lecture series, the upcoming series. We're gonna feature, I think, Prof. Robert Brown, yeah, it's already in the pipeline. So hope you enjoy our next series of collaboration. I think that's all I would like to say. Have a good day to everyone and bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Be safe.